Good morning, and welcome to the launch of the 2020 edition of 1,000 Companies to Inspire Britain. London Stock Exchange Group is proud to present the 7th edition of this report, identifying the UK's most dynamic and fastest growing businesses. A huge congratulations to all of the companies selected for inclusion in this year's edition. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, are the backbone of the UK economy. They drive growth, lead innovation, and provide a critical source of jobs. Companies in this year's report have together created more than 42,000 jobs over the past 2 years and have recorded average revenue growth of 41%. It has been a uniquely challenging year for growth business in the UK. As well as their contribution to the UK economy, companies featured in this year's report have inspired us through their ability to respond to the challenges presented by the global COVID-19 pandemic. It is vital that we continue to support UK SMEs as we rebuild a post-COVID-19 economy. As ever, the report reveals the diversity and innovation of growing British businesses across the country. The top industries represented in this year's companies are led by engineering and construction, manufacturing, food and beverages, retail, and technology. The companies are also spread across the UK. London and South East England continue to contribute the greatest number of companies, followed by East of England, North West England, and Yorkshire and the Humber. Scotland and the East Midlands have recorded the highest increase in representation compared to the 2019 report. The businesses we are celebrating this morning demonstrate resilience, growth, and entrepreneurship. I would like to thank our sponsors this year, British Business Bank, Senkos, and The Telegraph, as well as our research partner, Bowhurst. We're also grateful to our expert contributors, providing their insights on the UK SME and growth finance landscape, and for the continued cross-party support from the UK government. We wish all our companies the best for the coming year ahead, and we hope that they will continue to inspire others as they have inspired us.
Hello, my name's Angeline Woodland and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at the British Business Bank. 2020 has been an enormously challenging year for all businesses across the UK. Smaller businesses have shown great strength and resilience in addressing the disruption that has been caused as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. As the UK's National Economic Development Bank, the British Business Bank has as its mission to make finance markets work better for smaller businesses, wherever they may be based across the UK. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, we've significantly increased our support for smaller business finance. Working closely with our delivery partners, we're now supporting upwards of £57 billion of finance, and that translates into providing support for well over 1 million businesses across the UK, meaning that we can really be there for businesses at the time of their greatest need. And we will have as important a role to play in their recovery, really lighting the way for businesses as they move from this stage of survival through to stabilisation and then back onto recovery and growth once more. It's hugely encouraging to see that 150 businesses featured in this year's 1,000 Companies to Inspire Britain report have been supported by one of the many programmes on offer by the British Business Bank. And we're absolutely delighted to return as lead sponsor for the third year. And I'd like to personally congratulate each and every one of the companies who are featured in the report on their resilience, on their positivity and their determination to succeed. Thank you.
I'm Stephen Keys and I head up the Growth Companies Corporate Finance team at Senkos Securities. We're delighted to be sponsoring the 1,000 Companies to Inspire Great Britain once again, and many congratulations to all the companies that feature. At Senkos, we focus on raising equity capital for growth companies. And since we started the business in 2005, we've raised on average over £1 billion in every year since. SMEs remain the key driver for the UK economy. And alongside that, we've got in the AIM market, the most successful growth market in the world. That gives us great access to deep pools of capital. And our role at Senkos is to be that trusted advisor and sit alongside management teams in partnering with them and introducing them to long-term institutional supportive shareholders. There's no doubt that the business community generally and also the stock market is going to be facing some exceptional challenges in the coming months. But we remain confident and in fact have demonstrated in recent months that the public markets remain open and that UK investors remain supportive for UK growth companies. So if you would like to explore anything further and whether or not an IPO might be the right option for you and your business, then we'd be delighted to hear from you.
Hello everyone, and thank you to the London Stock Exchange Group for inviting me to speak at the launch of the 2020 Companies to Inspire Britain report. This report celebrates some of the most exciting companies in an extraordinary sector. Small and medium-sized enterprise are this country's engine room of growth. They drive growth, they spark innovation, and they create jobs and prosperity. And it's no exaggeration to say that the owners and staff of these firms are the unsung heroes of our economy. Every day, they demonstrate ingenuity, adaptability, and resilience. And that is the case now more than ever. Over the past few months, I've been deeply impressed by how many SMEs have responded so well to the immense challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. And my message to the sector is this: the government recognises all that you have achieved, despite the obstacles in your way, and we stand shoulder to shoulder with you. And that's why we're providing businesses with one of the most generous and comprehensive packages of support in the world. It includes government-backed finance, loans for innovative firms through our pioneering Future Fund, grants for self-employed workers, and of course the furlough scheme, which has benefited 1 million companies and paid the wages of 9 million people. Now, over the last few weeks, the Chancellor has set out the Winter Economy Plan to help provide a degree of certainty to businesses through the months ahead. But our support to SMEs just doesn't end with the crisis. We've got a clear plan to help British businesses succeed, and we'll back firms every step of the way. We want to make this country one of the best places globally to set up and grow a business. And that's why 6 years ago, we set up the British Business Bank to help SMEs obtain the vital funding they need at every stage of growth of their business. That's played a crucial role in issuing loans to SMEs during the COVID crisis. But even prior to the pandemic, the bank had provided £8 billion in funding to 98,000 smaller businesses. And this government is now focused on ensuring that capital continues to flow to SMEs in every corner of the UK. It's also great to see so many examples of green businesses and sustainable initiatives included in this report. As hosts of next November's COP26 climate conference and one of the biggest economies on earth, the UK is determined to show leadership in the battle against global warming. We recently underlined that commitment with our £3 billion plan to create thousands of green jobs across the United Kingdom. And SMEs are going to play an important role in seizing those future opportunities. So I'll wind up where I started by thanking Britain's SMEs for all they do for this country, whatever industry and wherever you're based. You really are very special to this economy, and I look forward to working with you and doing anything I can in government to support you into the future.
Good morning, my name is Claire Dorian and I'm part of our capital markets team at the London Stock Exchange. And I'm delighted to be joined this morning by John Roberts, CEO and founder of AO.com, who's going to share some of his insights about growing online electrical retailer AO.com to the business it is today, now listed on the London Stock Exchange 6 years ago on the main market and part of our FTSE 250 index. John is a British entrepreneur. He's a leader, he's an investor, and he's a passionate philanthropist. And in addition to his very busy role leading AO.com, he is also chairman of Onside Youth Zones, a national charity that is supporting youth provision in the UK. John, I know that many of the businesses that are listening here today perhaps were sort of in your situation back in 2000 and looking at growing their business and scaling it up. You built it on an infamous £1 bet, and it's become a 2 billion revenue business. Can you take us back to that time and tell us how you did it and how you have grown the business?
Yeah, good morning, Claire. So yeah, the famous £1 bet story. It wasn't the £1 really. It was the honour, if you like, that went with the bet. It was my mate, a guy called Alan that I used to have a drink with in the pub, and he was talking about this thing called the internet. And in very simple terms, I was saying, I reckon you could flog gear on that, and he was saying, no, it's all about search. So given that Google didn't exist then and Alta Vista was the main search engine. In truth, he was probably right and I got it wrong. But from that bet, the bet was that I wouldn't give up my job and actually throw everything into doing this idea that we had. So they really crystallized that, and so that was Christmas Eve 1999, and kind of the rest is history. But it was much more about you do what you say you're going to do when somebody sort of lays it down for you.
That's fantastic. And it's great to have that, the vision and the insight in order to be able to do that. Um, I think, what some of the companies here today would like to know is, what perhaps would you have done differently, and what lessons have you sort of learned as you've really grown and scaled the business? Perhaps you could share some of the insights into that.
Yeah, well, it's very easy to try and rewrite history on what you would do differently. But the great thing about the internet, particularly in those days, was that you could be anything that you wanted to be. But what you needed was cheek and imagination and a willingness to dream and think big. And I think those qualities are still critically important in our business today on how do we keep moving it on to the next level and the next level. And certainly my role in the business isn't very much about executing on the day-to-day stuff. We have an incredible team across the business that does that. But how do we keep stretching? So it's taken us 20 years to get to $1 billion of sales and 12 months to get to nearly 2. But how do we get to 4? How do we get to 8? How do we get to 20? And what does that look like? And how do we set ourselves up for that? I think what would I have done differently? I think one of the challenges that a lot of businesses face, and certainly we face, we started with £100,000, and which seemed like a lot of money at the time, but actually it wasn't. And we could have done a lot of things differently and faster had we had more money at the outset. But I had no clue how to go and raise that money. And I think the UK particularly is not set up to help people, where the US has a much more risk averse approach to how people inject capital into businesses. But equally at the same time, I think the fact that we didn't have the money made us even more creative. So I still say today regularly, constraints create innovation. And so there were lots of businesses in kind of .com 1 that was spraying money around, like a fireman's hose on, super cool things and office environments, and frankly, just wasting money, where we didn't. And so we've always had an incredible financial discipline, and we've always done daily cash flow forecasts. And so I think those disciplines gave us a different outlook to some other businesses, and we've maintained those disciplines all the way through time. And it has made us, hugely creative and inventive and getting more from less. And we have to think differently. How do we get things we've no right to get? And normally that's winning hearts and minds or imagination. But it gives you a much more expansive mindset on believing you can get things that you've got no right to get. So I think it might have been easier, but then we might have failed as a result of being richer at the time, if you like.
And when you talk about that, you mentioned team, and team have undoubtedly been, really important in helping you to achieve that growth. And we know that culture is hugely important to you at AO, and that you invest very heavily into that. How do you actually see that pay back over time?
I think if you need to see it pay back over time, don't do it. You're in the wrong business. If you don't just fundamentally, intrinsically believe in it deeply and passionately, don't do it. The middle of a battlefield is a very dangerous place to stand. So you should passionately, inherently believe in the value of culture, or spend nothing on it, would be my view. So I never really think about how it pays back. I just know that it does. And over time, so in our early years, it's very easy to rewrite history on how we went about that. It was all centered around community and alcohol and a sense of being the underdog, and come on, we can do this, and we'll do it together, and band of brothers and sisters, and however you want to phrase that, shield wall or whatever it might be. We were all in it together. We lived it, morning, noon, and night as a kind of a family atmosphere. And the biggest challenge actually for us, and which is not a straight line of progression, is as you grow. When you're little, we started out with 3 of us in an office. You know everyone as you grow, and you can get your arms around it, and everyone's ups and downs and personal struggles and all the rest of it. I think we've got about 5,000 people across the business now. It's impossible to know everybody. It's just absolutely impossible. And so as you go through all those different stages, how do you keep that personal touch across the business? How do you stay close to things? And how, at the end of the day, you do need structure and processes around how we do certain things. And how do you keep it really human? And how do you keep it fun? And how do you keep the essence of what that is about? Can you explain it to a 5-year-old, and will they get it just like that? And if they won't, then probably most people across the business won't. Simplicity, clarity, truth, those things are really, really important. That perfection is achieved when there's nothing left to take away rather than when there's nothing left to add, would be a good way to think about it.
Yeah, I think that's great advice about culture, and that focus on service and client service. So what advice actually would you give then for the companies that are part of the 1,000 Companies report that are here today about how they should grow and scale their business? What should really be their priorities and focus?
So I would say your top, I don't know exactly what the number is, but probably 20 or 30 people, depending on the type of business that you're in, will define success or failure. People make the difference in every single way. And so I would think about those top people as high performing athletes. So whether that is whatever your football team is, but if you think about the top of the Premiership, if you look at Liverpool, well, let's pick them because they won it reasonably comfortably. So how they think about those elite athletes, they think about it from a diet point of view, they think about it from a mental health point of view, they think about physical fitness. They have psychologists on how do they get Mo Salah to go out there and know that when he hits it, it's going to go in the top corner. How do you organize that team? You don't want Mo Salah in goal, sticking with him as the example. And so as a leader of the business, actually, it's much more important that your role is how do you organize everybody else? If you think about yourself in that analogy as Jurgen Klopp, you don't want to be the psychologist, you don't want to be the strength and conditioning coach or the dietitian. So surround yourself with brilliant people, but how you organize everybody and then trust them to execute on that. And then, frankly, get out of the way. Jurgen Klopp doesn't run around for 90 minutes. He stands there punching the air and arguing the toss on the sidelines, but he can't play the game. And so when it comes to playing the game, you've got to trust your people actually to get on with it. And their sense of achievement comes out of achieving it. And they might then run up to the halfway line and all celebrate together because they've scored a goal. And so you should all celebrate together. But your role is very firmly to recruit great people, create the best environment, and then get out of the way.
And John, could I just ask one final question? Could I ask what your lasting piece of advice would be?
Well, I would guess it would probably be a combination of don't listen to the dream stealers. There are so many of them out there. So really, truly go for it. You might as well go down for a ship as a dinghy. Dream big, and anything that's worth having is definitely worth fighting for. And you've got to be prepared to do whatever it takes to get there. And when you look yourself in the mirror, if you're really prepared to do it, and if you're not, be honest enough with yourself to do that. But if you are, then dream big and absolutely go for it. There's never any prizes for second place.
John, thank you so much for sharing all of your insight this morning. It's been really fascinating to hear your story and how AO.com has grown to the business it has today. Your passion and your drive and your energy is really inspirational. And I think that the companies that have been listening here today will have really enjoyed listening to the conversation. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Claire. It's a pleasure.
Hi, Giles. Firstly, congratulations to Brandwatch for being included in this year's 1,000 Companies to Inspire Britain report, which is amazing. Congratulations to you and everyone in the business. Could you maybe start with telling us a little bit about how the business started? What was your vision back then?
Sure thing. So Brandwatch started, we launched in August 2007, so about 13 years ago. I've been running with a couple of partners an agency business that built technology for other companies, and I wanted to build a product business. And the opportunity that I saw was really driven by the emergence of the internet and what was called citizen journalism back then, or user-generated content, and the emergence of blogs and forums, and the idea that people were talking to each other about their experiences of products and services, and influencing each other, and brands had no idea this was going on. So I had this idea that we could build a technology that would, an application that would help brands understand consumers. We felt that we could build an insights engine to help brands understand this kind of new conversation that was emerging. So I bought the domain name Brandwatch. We came up with the name Brandwatch, bought the domain name, and started putting the product together. And as I said, launched it in 2007. There was also this sense that I had at the time that there were these big technological changes that were going on. One was the emergence of this data stream, this ability to analyze, to attain and analyze this data in a way that just wasn't possible before. That was driven by the internet. The second was the constant explosion of computational power driven by Moore's law, doubling of computational power every 18 months, which continues to this day. So there's the ability to put these machines together and analyze this huge data set. And the third was the emergence of software-driven AI. So you could actually use kind of software to understand language, understand sentiment, understand emotion, and look at the drivers of these conversations, so that brands can understand what was actually going on at the kind of scale that we're talking about here. So I saw this as a kind of a long-term opportunity, kind of societal shift driven by the internet, and I thought that this would be a really interesting business to start. I didn't realize how difficult it was going to be to actually build the product, but that was the underlying driver.
Yeah, of course. And I was going to ask you, when did you know, like, that the business is here to stay, that there is that scale potential?
It's a really difficult thing to put your finger on, actually. The first sale is kind of a moment that in retrospect you see as a huge deal, but at the time it's just a small thing, right? We made our first sale. I mean, it's a big deal, but it's not like, oh, we've made it or this business is here to stay. You still feel, or I still felt, incredibly vulnerable. Probably 18 months in, and at the end of 2010, so about 3 years in, we had a Christmas party, and I like to give a speech and reflect on the year at every kind of Christmas parties. And this was one where we were in a basement of a restaurant in Brighton, and there were probably about 70 people or something at that time. And that's, I think, the moment that I realized that we were not as risky as we had been before as a business. And I came up with this phrase, which I kind of said to the whole company at the Christmas party, which was, now that we're over the 3-year hump and this business is not going to disappear, we need to be bold, be brilliant. That was the mantra that I put out, and it started getting written on the walls. And actually, it was a confidence thing. It was a moment at which the company stepped into their sense that we're building something.
That's amazing. That's amazing to have kind of recognized it at that time as well, and not many years later. At what point did you feel it was important to bring in external investment? That there's no way the company was going to be able to do it on its own. It's the nature of the business.
the key moment really was end of 2011, so 4 years in, when myself and the two other directors of the company decided that if we were going to be really ambitious, we needed to get into the US market. Our biggest competitor was in the US, and I thought we were doing great. We were pretty much doubling every year, but they were doing a lot better. So they were kind of doubling, tripling, quadrupling every year, and they were basically outgrowing us. And I could, like, you project that forward 5 or 10 years, and they'll become like a big company that has a great brand reputation, so on and so forth, and great customer base, and we'll be like a long way behind. So I managed to convince the directors that we needed to raise venture capital, and back then there was this fear, certainly between the three of us, that a VC would come in, and there were stories about how they would take over and how the culture of the company would change. And we were very precious about our culture. We've always been we've always held the culture of the company, very close to our hearts, and we wanted to continue with that. We didn't want to have an external influence coming in and ruining this really lovely culture that we built. But I managed to convince them that that was the right thing to do. So I went out and pitched, and I didn't know many VCs. So there's this book of the venture capital handbook, and it's like this thick, and it's got thousands of VCs in there. You just got to start. Basically, I think I pitched to about 20 early stage venture capitalists, and we got 3 term sheets. And we ended up choosing pretty much the best term sheet, but also the partner at the VC firm that I got on with really, really well. I mean, to be honest, the 3 term sheets I got on with all of them well. I thought they'd all be great partners for us. But so that kind of personal connection was really important. And then we did 2 more venture capitalist rounds, like a couple of years later. But bringing in those professional investors brings in a whole level of discipline into the company, because they sit on your board. Your corporate governance starts to improve. Your monthly data tracking, and all of the sort of things that you have to do when you grow up as a company, that they encourage that, and they help you do that. So that actually has been very positive.
Oh, that's great. That's really great to hear, because every company has their own journey with VC investors. So since getting the funding and the business is scaling, what would you say have been some key kind of milestones for you and the business?
Yeah, so deciding to take on venture capital is a real milestone. The thing that I didn't realize at the time, that is like very clear to me now, is that VCs have an investment horizon. It's kind of at the far end, sort of 10 years. So when you take on VC money, you're basically starting the clock on some sort of exit, whether it's an IPO or a trade sale or a sale to another investor. So that actually is a big moment. And then about 3 years after the first VC investment, we were growing really well. The company was doing great, and I spoke to somebody who said, look, at some point in an industry like yours, which was an industry that didn't really exist before 2005, 2006. So we're kind of now talking about 2015 sort of time. So it's 10 years old. VC money's gone into it. Innovation is kind of blossomed. A whole bunch of companies have sprung up. Some are doing well, some are doing less well. Most of them are losing money. At some point, the market starts to consolidate. And you as an organization and you as a CEO need to make a decision. Are you somebody that is a consolidator? Are you going to start to create a group and get the synergies from putting businesses together and create a profitable, leader? Or are you going to be a consolidatee and be part of somebody else's kind of roll up, as they say? And so that was a moment where we actually decided we were going to take a lead, and we were going to start acquiring companies and building a bigger organization. So we made a couple of small acquisitions, and then 2 years ago we decided to merge with the second biggest player in our space. We were the biggest, and we thought if we merge with the second biggest, then we can create some cost synergies, because you only need one finance team, you only need one support team, etc., etc. So that's a more efficient thing, and also create more scale and have a bigger engineering department, a bigger innovation team to actually kind of drive the whole industry forwards. That was a big decision and a big move. And now that we're 2 years post that deal, now we are one company, all the customers are migrated, and now we kind of go back to the motion that we had before of like very intense kind of development and looking after our customers and selling and all of that, and marketing, all of that kind of stuff, but at a bigger scale.
And what about your personal journey, Giles? I know in the past you've talked about how it was just the founding team and it's grown, and how that kind of changes what your role is in the business.
Yeah, interesting. Like when you're 5 or 6 people and you're going from what Peter Thiel, the kind of US ex-PayPal guy, says, from 0 to 1, where you're creating something that wasn't there before, that's a very different place to running a 500-person company that's doing over $100 million in revenue per annum. Now my job is a kind of a facilitator of organizational performance, and also somebody that part of my job is to try to keep the complexity down as an organization grows. Just things get more complex. You've got systems here and here. You've got teams all over the place, different levels of staff. You've got different departments, and the complexity can overwhelm the vision and the direction. So in the early days, it's super simple. We need to do this. Now it's like, well, we've got all of these different kind of things going on. How do we prioritize? What does being super successful look like? So my job now really is about helping us focus and keep us lean and efficient as possible. But the transition from going from that kind of startup CEO to the one that's running a company of our size, and I can imagine, like, if we were 10 times bigger, what that's going to be different again. That journey is interesting. It's not for everybody. There have been times when I've just thought, am I a startup guy or am I a scale up guy? And I think it's just the fact that the job has been changing so much over the last 13 years has kept me interested, motivated. I've been learning the whole time. I think of it a little bit like a wave. The company is this wave. It starts small and gets bigger and bigger. And you're kind of, if you're an executive in the company, you're kind of surfing that wave. And at times you feel like you're on the wave and you can do any trick you want. And at times the wave is like going a little bit ahead of you and you're just thinking, I need to speed up. I need to upgrade myself, my performance, my ability to run teams. I need to learn faster in order to keep up with the demands of the job. And that's an interesting journey to go on.
So what would you say? You've talked about culture, how important culture is in the company. Be bold, be brilliant. You've talked about the importance of bringing in those venture capital investors that not only give you the capital but also increase the rigor in the business. What other success factors do you think have contributed to Brandwatch's story?
I think the consistency of the vision is, and I think actually that's where having your kind of founder-led business as it grows is helpful, because the founders tend to be that consistent sort of North Star that helps the organization realize that we're not going over here and then over here and over here. There's a consistency that's super helpful. I think the other thing that has been incredibly helpful has been evolving the senior team as the company grew. So now and again, we've brought in people that have been there before, if you like, that have run large teams, and that's been incredibly important to the ongoing growth of the company. But then my job and the senior leadership job is to form a team. So if you're reconstituting your senior team every 2 or 3 years as you're going through this journey, and it isn't like new team in, old team out, it's like changing bits as you go and maybe expanding it a bit. Like we went from having 5 men in our senior team, which is obviously not great, to expanding the team to 11 with 6 men and 5 women. which suddenly was a completely different dynamic, a much better dynamic in terms of the quality of the conversation, the balance of the conversation. But 11 people in the senior team is a lot, and it took a lot of work. Again, I brought in a team coach to help us kind of gel as a group and to become efficient in the way that we communicated, and to build trust and all of those really important things for running a team. So over the last 2 or 3 years, I've focused a lot on the senior team dynamics, the people, the responsibilities, and the coordination between them.
What advice would you give to other companies in the UK or that are in the 1,000 companies list that are growing, that are thinking about how to accelerate their growth, whether to really go for it or not, maybe, that may be, going through current challenging times as well? What advice would you give to them?
The market isn't one thing. There isn't just one need. There's all the different organizations have slightly different needs. So identifying when you've got good enough product market fit is a really important moment. And then when you think you have, I think if I was to go back, I would probably have tried to scale the company quicker, earlier. Now, I can say that now as somebody that runs a company that 500 people, that I could do it with the skills that I've got now. I was learning those skills at the time, so I don't know if I would have been very efficient or I would have done a great job. But empirically, I think once you've got decent product market fit, really investing heavily in the organization and the growth and bringing in an investor with deep pockets is I think, from where I'm sitting right now, that's what I would do. And then as the organization scales, the other thing which is absolutely critical for a SaaS business is making sure that you're looking after your existing customers, understanding them and retaining them. Because any churn at all, any net revenue retention churn, any net revenue retention less than 100% ends up being a sea anchor on the growth of the organization. So becoming increasingly fixated on how your customers are using your product and how you can make sure that you're listening and learning and serving them, that need doesn't get any less. In fact, I think as you scale an organization, it gets more.
No, that's brilliant. I think, all that translates to any sector, to be honest. I think a lot of businesses actually fail in taking their products to market because they're obsessed in creating the most perfect product, which actually is kind of a nice to have rather than addressing a proper need in the market. So that's really great advice. Thank you, Giles. Thank you for being with us today and for sharing your journey.
My pleasure. It's great to be involved, and thank you so much.
It's both a privilege and a pleasure to be present at this virtual launch of the 1,000 Companies to Inspire Britain report. Of course, I hope it won't be long before we can actually come together, but for the moment, these events do have to be virtual. And I'm really pleased to have been asked to take part, because this report shows the vibrancy, the incredible variety and the ecology of small and medium-sized enterprises in our country. I'm particularly pleased, of course, to see that there are some excellent examples from my own neck of the woods, Oxford, where I'm speaking to you from today. But I'm also very pleased that in this report we see examples of SMEs right across the country, where we've seen entrepreneurs with vision, with passion, with determination, making sure that they can create those business opportunities and provide employment. Of course, these are very difficult times for SMEs currently. This report was written before we entered the pandemic, but the kinds of business practices that we see described in that report, I think, show that many of our SMEs are in good stead to weather whatever is thrown at them. That commitment to excellent service, to innovation, to developing workforce, to spotting new opportunities and to working with other partners, I think is very, very important in the current context. And of course, it was important previously. What do we need to do for the future to support our SMEs? Well, of course, many of them are facing enormous challenges right now. That goes without saying. I won't talk about the changes that still need to be made to economic support so we can ensure that they weather this crisis. But of course, we need to deal with the long-term issues as well. I'm absolutely certain that SMEs are critical to driving up productivity in the UK, in particular to dealing with some of those real gaps in productivity growth that we see across our country. I'm also sure that they are essential in making sure that our workforce is reskilling and upskilling so that we can ensure we have eventually the highest proportion of highly skilled workers in the OECD within our own country. And I know that SMEs so often are absolutely critical to local economies. They are what makes the economy that we experience from day to day in our high streets, in our communities, delivering those services and providing goods. So it's wonderful to be part of this launch. If anybody hasn't read the report, I would really urge them to do so. Some wonderful examples of innovation in there. Massive congratulations to those who've been featured. And let's make sure that we harness that dynamism for the future, because we will certainly need it more than ever after this crisis.
SMEs and scaling businesses play a vital role in the success of the UK economy. And the London Stock Exchange is committed to providing support for these businesses as they navigate their funding options for the next stages of their growth. Our flagship 1000 Companies to Inspire Britain report shines the light on the most dynamic and fastest growing of these businesses. And we congratulate all of the companies selected for inclusion in the 2020 report. Through our Elite platform and ecosystem, we support the most ambitious private companies as they prepare to scale up and to grow their businesses. Through Elite, companies have the opportunity to engage with their peers, business leaders and experts, and also to access finance to help them reach their full potential. Our public market for small and medium-sized growth companies, AIM, enables companies globally and across all sectors to raise capital from a diverse investor base and to return to the market for further rounds of permanent equity capital. AIM also is supported by a broad community of advisors who understand the needs of growing and entrepreneurial businesses. Of course, our main market is a world-leading marketplace for the admission and for the trading of securities. Its location in the heart of the world's preeminent financial center also makes it the ideal home for many of the world's largest and most successful companies. Indeed, a broad cross-section of our Elite, AIM, and main market companies are featured in this year's report. However, our support goes beyond the capital raising infrastructure. Through Elite and through our issuer services platform, we also recognize the need for growing companies to share their stories and grow their profile and their network with the investor community. In this current environment, it's crucial for companies to be able to engage directly with their key stakeholders. And as we all learn to communicate in different ways, we look forward to extending our Issuer Services Spark Live program and our Marketplace program to Britain's private companies to support their individual needs and increase their visibility. Thank you for taking part today. You can learn more about our report and the companies shortlisted this year through our online portal, where you can also access video content and download links to the report. And of course, the full list and report can be found at 1000companies.com. Once again, many congratulations to all 1000 companies, and thank you for joining us in recognizing their resilience, their growth, and entrepreneurship.